Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Courageous Pivot podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Telpner. And if you're here, there's a very good chance that you are standing at some kind of crossroads. Just a hunch. Maybe you're feeling the whisper that something needs to shift, or maybe you're shouting it from the rooftops but can't quite figure out how to make it happen. You're effectively paralyzed by overwhelm and can't move forward with the first step. That is what we're addressing in today's episode. I also wanted to ask and ensure that you are subscribed over at courageouspivot.com. That's where you'll find the show notes. That's where you will receive emails to our inner circle, extra little special things in between. And that's where you'll also be invited to join the kind of next level inner circle of what we're building here. So please be sure to go to courageouspivot.com to subscribe. Now, today's episode, where we address that paralysis by analysis by paralysis. What is it? I don't know. But we're talking about something that might feel a bit confronting, but what hasn't so far? I promise, there's liberation on the other side of what we're about to go through together. I hope. I think so. What we're exploring here is why doing more of what you've always done will only ever give you more of what you've always gotten. More of the same plus more of the same will equal more of the same. But also, we're looking at why, if you truly want change, you are going to have to pull up those socks and become the architect of it. I went to a therapist once, and once only, back when I was 25. Call it my quarter-life crisis. My heart was torn between two dysfunctional relationships. I hated my job. I was back living with my parents, and it hit me. Is this what it is to adult? I mean, I was living with my parents, so I guess I wasn't fully adulting, but none of this seemed very fun. I told the therapist, I just need something to fall into place that feels right, and I will then build my life around that. And she said to me, Meghan, as she looked over her glasses. I don't actually think she had glasses, but the visual of this just suits the vibe of my story. She said, Meghan, you cannot wait for something to fall into place. You have to decide what is most important and put that in place yourself. I was healed forever. This was all I ever needed to be told. Not exactly, but this wisdom stayed in my heart, and I've shared it with countless people over the last 20 years who have been at their own crossroads. So let me start with this question. Have you ever found yourself saying, I just need to work harder, or I just need to be more disciplined, or maybe if I push through this one more time, things will be different, or maybe it's if he would just leave me first, or if only I'd get laid off, then. But here's what I've learned. When the strategy isn't working, doing more of it won't suddenly make it work. Or put another way, waiting for it to happen to you is just delaying what your heart already knows to be true. You're just delaying that work you know is needed to begin thriving in your own life. When the pattern is creating suffering, repeating it won't magically lead to joy. When you're on a path that doesn't align with who you're becoming, walking faster down that same path won't get you to where your heart is calling you to go. In my conversation with Tiago Forte, he talked about being in a job in Silicon Valley where at his first review in this position, his boss or manager went through sort of the trajectory he could be on to reach the top levels in that company. And when he looked at that path, he realized like every aspect of it sounded terrible. This is kind of what we're talking about, except most people just go along with it because they think that's what they're supposed to do. As I already said, more of the same plus more of the same will always just equal more of the same. And this isn't just philosophical wisdom or a nice sounding cliche. It's neuroscience. It's quantum physics. Dare I say it? It's the way reality actually works. There's a brilliant book called Mind to Matter by Dawson Church, and in it, he explores something that completely shifted how I understand change. Church talks about how our thoughts literally shape our reality. Not in some broad, abstract, wishful thinking kind of way, but in a measurable, biological, and quantum way. He explains that our brains are constantly forming neural pathways based on our repeated thoughts and behaviors. When we think the same thoughts, take the same actions, and respond to life in the same ways, we are reinforcing the neural architecture that keeps us stuck in those patterns. Your brain is essentially saying, oh, we're doing this again. Great. I'll make this pathway even stronger so it's easier to do next time. This hard wiring in the brain is why you can know intellectually that something needs to change, but find yourself repeating the exact same patterns anyway. We also touch on this in my episode with Ali Shapiro. Your brain is optimized for efficiency, not transformation. It wants to keep you doing what you've always done because that's the path of least resistance. And the reality is that the more you keep doing things the way you've always done them, the harder and harder wired it becomes, and thereby the harder and harder it becomes to change. We've already discussed in previous episodes about how and why the brain resists change. Another reason why I'm always chirping on about coherence, the simple practice that can take you out of your brain entirely and into your heart. But here's where it gets fascinating. Church also shows us that we have the power to interrupt these patterns, that we can literally rewire our brains by consciously choosing different thoughts, different actions, different ways of being. We can, with attention and a little discipline, facilitate our own pattern interrupts, which also works remarkably well for worry and anxiety. The catch? Well, the catch is that we actually have to do something different. We have to create the change that we want to experience. This connects so deeply to the work of heart coherence that I've been practicing and teaching for over a decade. When we're operating from old patterns, we're often in a state of incoherence, that autopilot. Our heart and brain are out of sync. We're just running the programming we already have. We're also reacting to what's happening rather than responding. When we can interrupt this pattern and pause, breathe, hum, and even smile, when we can drop into our hearts and create coherence between our heart and our brain, we open up access to new possibilities. We move out of the survival brain that just wants to keep repeating what's familiar, and we step into the creative brain that can envision and create something new. And this is where imagination becomes one of our most powerful tools. I have a quick little intermission for this episode, or is it an intermission? I want to invite you to please head over to courageouspivot.com and subscribe there. There is a lot brewing around the Courageous Pivot, and I'm working on opening up a little inner circle community. And the plan as of today is to start offering little workshops that only the inner circle will be invited to participate in, as well as the opportunity perhaps for live in-person events. Could it be? Could it be? It might just be. I'm also going to be sharing a little more about my own personal pivots, as well as some updates from our guests that have been on the show. So you may have heard the announcement to follow me on Substack. Well, we're changing course now. We are pivoting, and the action is over at courageouspivot.com. So go over there, get on the list. You'll get each episode dropped to your inbox, as well as exclusive first dibs access to everything that will be created in and around the idea of Courageous Pivot, doing that work, the developing framework, and of course, the beautiful community. I cannot wait to see you over there. Now, back to the episode. I was recently listening to an episode of the Know Thyself podcast. I love it. And the guest was Dr. John Churchill, a transpersonal psychologist and Dharma teacher. And he said something that was so simple and change-making at the same time. He was talking about the power of imagination, and not imagination in the way we typically think of it, like daydreaming or fantasy. Churchill explains the imaginal realm is actually a dimension of consciousness we can access to envision possibilities that don't yet exist in our current reality. He describes imagination as a full-blown, multi-dimensional experience where we don't just see a different future, we actually feel ourselves into it. This is what Joe Dispenza teaches too, that true envisioning requires you to embody the feeling of the possibility. You have to feel it in your body, experience the emotional state of it, not just picture it like a postcard in your mind. And here's why this matters so much when we're talking about breaking patterns. When you're stuck in more of the same, your brain can only conceive of solutions that exist within the same paradigm. It only knows what you already know on a surface level. It's like trying to solve a problem using the same thinking that created it. But when you engage your imagination, When you access that imaginal dimension Churchill talks about, you're literally opening yourself to possibilities that exist outside your current neural pathways. You're creating a new vision that your brain can then begin to wire towards. If you envision yourself as stuck, you're stuck. If you envision yourself as a victim of your circumstances, well, you remain a victim. But if you engage your imagination and feel it in your body, you are actually feeling and embodying a different possibility. Even if you can't work out the how, the first step, you have begun the process of creating the conditions for that reality to emerge. This connects so deeply to the work of heart coherence that I've been practicing and teaching for over a decade. When we're operating from old patterns, we're often in a state of incoherence. Our heart and brain are out of sync. We're running on autopilot. We're reacting rather than responding. But when we pause, when we drop into our hearts, when we create coherence between our heart and our brain, we open up access to new possibilities. We move out of the survival brain that just wants to keep repeating what's familiar, and we step into the creative brain that can envision and create something new. Think about it this way. If you're feeling burned out and your solution is to work more hours, maybe to get more money or amass more holiday time because then it will be okay and worth it, well, that is just more of the same under a bit of a disguise of having a goal in the mind. If you're feeling disconnected in your relationships and your solution is to avoid the difficult conversations because the known discomfort feels safer than the unknown possibility, that is also more of the same. If you're feeling unfulfilled in your work and your solution is to push through and hope it gets better, also more of the same. None of these approaches will create different results because they're all variations of the pattern that created the problem in the first place. So then, what does creating change actually look like? It starts with getting radically honest about what pattern you're stuck in. Not judging it, not making yourself wrong for it, just seeing it clearly. For me, one of my biggest patterns was believing that my worth came from how much I produced, how many people I served, how visible I was. So when I felt uncertain about my value, my automatic response was to do more, create more, show up more. And no, I have not fully broken this one yet. It has the potential to be more of the same. However, my bar has been raised, and that bar is to also check in with how it feels in my body. I mentioned this in episode 22 about the midlife chrysalis, and Tiago Forte also mentions it in episode 23. That old pattern of maximizing all opportunities, well, it came to a point where it was disconnecting me from what mattered most. It was creating the exact opposite of what I actually wanted, which was spaciousness, presence, and ease. The change I had to create wasn't about doing more. It was about consciously choosing to do less. It was about rewiring the neural pathway that said your worth equals your output and creating a new one that said be the permission slip to do less, to thrive more. That being in a state of joy is its own kind of service. That required me to take different actions, to say no when I would have said yes, to rest when I would have pushed, to trust that I was enough even when I wasn't producing. It was about breaking the old patterns, that pattern interrupt. It was, and to be perfectly honest, still is uncomfortable. My brain still fights this conditioning at every step of the way because the familiar patterns are just that, familiar. They offer a comfortable familiarity even when it became deeply uncomfortable. Every time I choose differently, I am creating change. So are you. Changing patterns will slowly but surely start to rewire the brain, and over time, the new patterns become easier. The new neural pathways get stronger, and we also become conditioned to be able to continuously keep rewiring, keep changing things up. It becomes less difficult, less scary, less hard after a while. And I have already begun to see that my reality has shifted to match my new way of being. And in case you didn't already know, we are all creators of our own reality. Dawson Church talks about something he calls the quantum field of infinite possibilities. It's this idea that at any given moment, countless potential futures exist simultaneously. The one that manifests is the one we give our energy and attention to through our thoughts, emotions, and actions. We get to define what path we take. So if we keep thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and taking the same actions, we're collapsing the quantum field into the same reality over and over again. But if we consciously choose to think differently, feel differently, act differently, and when we engage our imagination to envision and embody new possibilities, we're literally creating a different future. This isn't magical thinking. This is just how change actually works. And here's the beautiful and maybe slightly terrifying truth. No one can create this change for you. Not a coach, not a therapist, not your partner, not your best friend, not a podcast host with a soothing voice. You are the only one who can take the actions to interrupt your patterns. All those other people can help guide or inspire you, but you are the only one who can actually choose differently. You are the only one who can engage your imagination to feel into new possibilities. You are the only one who can create the life you want. This is both empowering and responsibility-inducing, isn't it? It's a lot when we live in a society that conditions us to not take responsibility for our current circumstances and instead blame every external factor under the sun. The liberating part of this, though, is that it also means you don't have to wait for circumstances to change before you change. You don't have to wait until you have more time or until everything lines up perfectly. The change begins with you, right now, exactly as things are. So I want to ask you, what pattern are you ready to interrupt? Where in your life are you doing more of the same and expecting different results? And here's the crucial question. Can you engage your imagination not just to picture something different, but to actually feel what it would be like to live differently? Can you drop into your body and experience the emotional state of the possibility you're reaching for? Maybe it's choosing rest over productivity. Maybe it's choosing honest conversations over avoiding conflict. Maybe it's choosing your authentic desires over other people's expectations. Maybe it's choosing to leave something that looks successful from the outside but feels hollow on the inside. Whatever it is, I want you to take a moment right now, close your eyes if you can, and take a breath and feel into it. Not just think about it, but feel it in your body, in your heart. What would it be like to live that different reality? How would it feel in your body? What emotions would be present? What would become possible? This is imagination as a transformative practice. This is engaging the imaginal realm to access possibilities your rational mind can't yet conceive of. And when you can feel it, like really feel it, that's when the neural rewiring begins. That's when you start creating the conditions for the new reality to emerge. What I know for sure, after years of making my own courageous pivots and having these deep conversations with others about theirs, change doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by hoping or wishing or waiting. Change happens when we consciously and courageously choose to and take action to create it. And yes, it's scary. Yes, your brain will resist it. And yes, there will be moments when you want to fall back into the familiar groove, the familiar patterning. But every time you choose differently, every time you engage your imagination to feel into new possibilities, you're quite literally reshaping your reality. You're rewiring your brain. You're stepping into a new version of yourself. You're creating what is possible in your life. And that, my friends, is what a courageous pivot is all about. I won't ask you if you're ready. You're here listening to this. Being ready may never come, but your heart landed you here so you know it's time for something to change. Ask yourself, what am I willing to do differently? Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but today. What's one choice you can make today that interrupts the pattern and creates a new possibility? And can you feel into what that possibility might become? Start there. That's where the transformations begin. I want to thank you, as always, for being with me today. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear that they have the power to create change in their life. And as always, find the show notes and all the resources at courageouspivot.com. Subscribe while you're there, please, please, please. I'm getting ready to launch the Inner Circle, which is where you'll find loads of bonus resources to help you do this work. Remember, more of the same will only ever give you more of the same. But you You have the power to imagine something entirely different that is aligned with who you are today. You also have everything you need inside yourself to create it. Thanks for listening. See you next time on The Courageous Pivot, and have a beautiful rest of your day.